modern day Christianity as an example, they will actually read the entire New Testament, and because they don't have a understanding of what the quote-unquote Old Testament is speaking about, their understanding or lack thereof of the word is limited, because quite frankly you cannot understand anything in the New Testament unless you have a good foundation in what we call the Old Testament. Okay, so in this lesson here, Moshe in the New Testament, this is one of the few lessons that I'm going to be reading primarily out of the New Testament to show where the proper understanding of how you really read. This lesson here, Moshe in the New Testament, is one of our foundational lessons that we teach in regarding the way that we read and understand the scriptures, the word of the Most High. Because using modern day Christianity as an example, they will actually read the entire New Testament, and because they don't have a understanding of what the quote-unquote Old Testament is speaking about, their understanding or lack thereof of the word is limited, because quite frankly you cannot understand anything in the New Testament unless you have a good foundation in what we call the Old Testament. Okay, so in this lesson here, Moshe in the New Testament, this is one of the few lessons that I'm going to be reading primarily out of the New Testament to show where the proper understanding of how you really read scriptures is how you really apply it and get knowledge and understanding. Okay, and we're going to also see how the characters, which is the Messiah and the disciples, apostles, how they viewed Moshe and the quote-unquote Old Covenant from the readings. Okay, first place we're going to start off in, we're going to start off in Luke the 16th chapter. Luke the 16th chapter. Luke the 16th chapter. Okay, we're going to start off at Luke 16th chapter, and we're going to start this off with a parable that Yahshua taught. Luke the 16th chapter and verse 19. Luke 16 and verse 19.
There was a certain rich man which was clothed in purple and fine linen, and fared sumptuously every day. And there was a certain beggar named Eleazar, which was laid at his gate, full of sores, and desiring to be fed with the crumbs which fell from the rich man's table. Moreover, the dogs came and licked his sores. And it came to pass that the beggar died and was carried by the angels into Abraham's bosom. The rich man also died and was buried.
Okay, now we got a parable here featuring two characters. One character is Eleazar, in the Greek is pronounced Lazarus, but Hebrew is Eleazar. And he was a poor beggar desiring to be fed while he was alive, and he desired the crumbs which fell from the rich man's table. And moreover, the dogs came and licked his sores. Verse 22 said, it came to pass that the beggar died and was carried by the angels into Abraham's bosom. The rich man also died and was buried. In essence, they were both buried, but Yahshua uses the term of him being carried into Abraham's bosom, but we do know that last resurrection have not yet happened yet. So we'll just use an allegory. He's telling an allegory. If you had to put a time event to this story, it would actually be a future event, because nobody has been resurrected yet, and all who are died, as we are about to read in the very next passage, are still in the grave or waiting for that resurrection. Okay, but anyway, and what happens is, more than likely, as we continue reading the story, we may find that rich man, he probably wasn't as charitable to the beggar as he probably should have been, because he going to end up in a place that he wouldn't have wanted to be, okay, which we're about to read in the very next verse. Go ahead.
23. And in the grave he lifted up his eyes.
No, is that what it says in yours? In the grave? Okay, because in King James it says in hell he lifted up his eyes.
Yeah, mine said in the grave.
Right, it probably should be in the hell. And I know why it said grave, because the definition of hell is grave, but then it also has another definition, which is the lake of fire. So it has two different definitions. They decided to use grave, but it can be grave because in the grave you ain't able to lift up anything. So it's the lake of fire.
It said Hades too.
Right. See exactly. See, that's you gotta be very careful with translations, because sometimes one word can have two different meanings. But it takes understanding to understand what that word means. And now it says grave, but in grave he's not able to lift up anything. How are you gonna lift up something if you're in the grave? You see what I'm saying? This is talking about the lake of fire is when, man, when you read it, it's gonna show you it's the lake of fire that he's talking about. But go ahead.
I'll read it again. And in Hades, or hell, he lifted up his eyes, being in torment, and seeing Abraham afar off, and Eleazar in his bosom. Right,
so here you go. This is the rich man. He's in a lake of fire. And again, that lake of fire is going to be right here on this earth, but it's not here yet. It's going to be here inside of the kingdom of the Most High. Okay, but it says, in hell he lifted up his eyes, and being in torment, and seeing Abraham afar off, because in other scripture we can find out that Abraham is also dead and buried at this point. And Lazarus, or Eleazar, he's in his bosom. Go ahead, 24.
And he cried and said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Eleazar, that he may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am tormented in this flame. But Abraham says, Son, remember that you in your lifetime received your good things, and likewise Eleazar evil things. But now he is comforted, and you are tormented. And besides all this, between us and you there is a great gulf fixed, so that they which will pass from hence to you cannot, neither can they pass to us that will come from thence.
Now, I'm gonna go somewhere. I'm gonna take a side note here just to explain what he just said here. It says, and besides all this, between us is us that's in the kingdom of heaven, and you that's in that lake of fire, there's a great gulf fixed, so that they which would pass from hence to you cannot, neither can they pass to us that would come from hence. So he's talking about a great gulf here. Let's go into Isaiah 66. It's going to be one of the only places in one of the few places in the Old Testament that we're going to read today in this lesson. But because I'm going on a whole different topic here, I just want to go here and read this. Isaiah the 66th chapter. Isaiah 66th chapter. That's the last chapter of Isaiah. And start this off at the 22nd verse. Isaiah 66 and 22.
For as the new heavens and new earth which I will make shall remain before me, saith Yahshua, so shall your seed and your name remain. And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Shabbat to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith Yahshua.
Now this is the kingdom of God that he's speaking about here. This is a prophetic word, prophetic double prophecy in regarding the kingdom of YAH. He says that as the new heavens and new earth which I will make shall remain before me, says YAH, so shall your seed and your name remain. And it shall come to pass, shall is always future tense, it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, says YAH. And again, the majority of the world don't observe the new moon, because they don't understand that the moon is where months come from. Not from January, February, March, April, but by the cycle of the moon is where the months come from. And every new moon we are supposed to come together on every new moon as an observance, okay? But it says from one new moon and also one Sabbath, from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, says Yahshua. Okay? So in the book of Colossians, the 2nd chapter, where he says, when it says, let no man judge you by meat, drink, or the holy day, new moons, or Sabbath day, he said, for these are a shadow of things to come. He's telling you this is a sign of things to come right here. This is the kingdom right here. And he's telling you that from one new moon to another, That's part of what we do now. From one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, says Yahshua. Verse 24.
And they shall go forth and look upon the carcasses of the men that have transgressed against me. For their worm shall not die, neither shall their fire be quenched, and they shall be an abhorrent unto all flesh.
So it said with all flesh, and that's another thing that a lot of people don't understand, that in the kingdom of the Most High, there's going to be other nations here on this earth even at that time. And they all are going to have to come up and worship before the Father right there in the kingdom. And it said that they shall go and look upon the carcasses of the men that have transgressed against me, for their worms shall not die, neither shall their fire be quenched, and they shall be an abhorrent to all flesh. That's that lake of fire right there. And it's going to be sitting right outside of New Jerusalem. Just like when you go into Revelations, it says, for outside are dogs and this, that, and the other, and all those who love to make a lie, they all in that lake of fire right there. And all flesh, when they come up to worship, they're going to be able to look over there. You ain't going to be able to get down there, and them that's down there ain't going to be able to get to you. So that's why we know that when we, so we're going back into Luke, the 16th chapter, and we can see how this is a prophetic parable that Yahshua is giving. Now, a lot of people may be familiar with this parable, but most people don't understand the reason why he's giving this parable, which we're going to understand the reasoning when we get to the end of the parable, okay? So, going back to the 26th verse, it says, and besides all this, between us and you there is a great gulf fixed, so that they which will pass from hence to you cannot, neither can they pass us that will come from thence. Okay, verse 27.
Then he said, I pray you therefore, Father, that you would send him to my father's house, for I have 5 brethren, that he may testify unto them, lest they also come into this place of torment.
Right, so the rich man said, well, look, since you cannot send him down here to cool my burning tongue, I pray that you may send him to my father's house, because there I got 5 brethren, that he may testify unto them, lest they also come into this place of torment, i.e. the lake of fire. Okay, verse 29.
Abraham saith unto him, they have Moshe and the prophets, let them hear them.
This is the purpose of this parable that Yahshua is teaching them. He says, look, they have Moshe and the prophets. Let them hear them. Verse 30.
And he said, nay, Father Abraham, but if one went unto them from the dead, they will repent.
So he said, look, no, Father Abraham, you know, yeah, they know about Moses and the prophets, but if one of them went from the dead, oh, they will definitely repent. But go ahead.
And he said unto him, if they hear not Moshe and the prophets, neither will they be persuaded, though one rose from the dead.
This is what Yahshua was teaching them. And because he's actually alluding to himself as being the one that will one day rise from the dead. But he said, look, if they don't hear Moshe and the prophets, because if you hear Moshe and the prophets, you will not get into this place of torment, this lake of fire. So they got Moshe and the prophets. All they got to do is listen to what they say, and you will make it into the kingdom of heaven. But if you don't listen to Moshe and the prophets, you're going to be in the same situation that rich man is in. That's what the whole parable was about. That's what he was teaching them. Most people don't even get that understanding of the parable. They go, oh, I know about the story about this. What the story was he was telling them about believing in what Moshe and the prophets wrote. He said to them, if they hear not Moshe and the prophets, neither will they. So he's telling them in his own words that if you don't hear Moshe and the prophets, you're not going to hear nothing that I'm saying, or whoever else that may rise from the dead say. That's basically what he was telling them. So Yahshua the Messiah was letting you know that the words of Moshe and the prophets had all the weight in terms of making it into the kingdom of heaven. Real simple concept. We're going to read the exact same thing because, again, line upon line, precept upon precept. And again, the topic for the day is Moshe and the New Testament. Let's go on to John the 5th chapter, John 5. John, the 5th chapter, John 5, and we're going to start this off in 28 verse, John 5 and 28.
Marvel not at this, for the hour is coming in which all that are in the grave shall hear his voice, and shall come forth, they that have done good unto the resurrection of life, and they that have done evil unto the resurrection of death.
And see, that hour have not come yet. That's why we know that Lazarus, even though Lazarus had a time when he actually died and was brought back to life, well, he died again. He's in the grave right now. Abraham, he's in the grave right now. Okay? But he said the hour is coming in which all that are in the graves shall hear his voice and shall come forth. They that have done good unto the resurrection of life, and they that have done evil unto the resurrection of damnation. Okay? So again, this explains the time frame of when that parable would have taken place, a futuristic parable that he's giving them. Okay? Skip down though to verse 44.
Okay. How can you believe which receive honor one of another, and seek not the honor that comes from Elohim only? Do not think that I will accuse you to the Father. There is one that accuses you, even Moshe, in whom you trust. For had ye believed Moshe, you would have believed me, for he wrote of me. But if you believe not his writings, how shall you believe my words?
See there, he said the exact same thing he said in the parable. He said, for had you believed Moshe, you would have believed me, for he wrote of me. And quite frankly, Yahshua had to speak the exact same thing that Moshe spoke. He could not have came with something entirely different. Moshe gave the law of the Mosaic. People use the term Mosaic law, which is a bad term that they done created in Christendom. Moses did not create not one single law. That's something that we have to understand. Everything that Moshe gave, the Father told them to give to the people. Even Moshe himself, when he got so fed up with the people and he defied the Father's law, he couldn't even make it into the land of promise. Right. So why would he be guilty of breaking his own law? He didn't have no law. Right. He only the Father's law is what he had. Real simple concept. And Yahshua said, for had you believed him, you would have believed me, for he wrote of me. But if you believe not his writings, how shall you believe my words? So I say that to all the Christian people that go to different churches who have been taught that, oh, we don't have to keep the Mosaic law no more. The same Messiah that they supposed to worship or whatever, or believe in, say if you believe not his writings, you cannot possibly believe my words. But they're not really looking at what he's saying, much less what Moshe is saying, okay? Let's go on to Acts, the 6th chapter. Acts 6. See, because one thing about reading scripture, we have to read them. A lot of people don't read them from a historical aspect. And the scriptures is a history book. It's a history book. So if you don't read it with a mind of history, you're going to be missing out on the understanding of a lot of these things. And like in a lot of stuff that we read here, these are actual people going through actual things, teaching actual lessons at an actual time period. And it's important to know time, place, who's speaking, who he's speaking to get a broad understanding of what we're reading here. Because sometimes we can read something and people say, well, I know what that means to me, or I know what that means to me, but it's not what it means to you, it's what it meant to the actual person that wrote it to whoever he wrote it to. Or what how it mean to you is secondary. First, understand it from the concept of the people that actually wrote it, okay?
He's speaking to.
Say it again?
The audience.
Yeah, and the audience he's speaking to, okay? Acts the 6th chapter, look at this. We're in Acts the 6th chapter. We're going to start this off at verse 8. This is talking about when Stephen, one of the disciples, went out and then he was preaching the gospel, the truth to the people, okay? Acts the 6th chapter and verse 8.
And Stephen, full of faith and power, did great wonders and miracles among the people. Then there arose certain of the synagogue which is called the synagogue of the Libertines and Cyrenians and Alexandrians, and of them of Cilicia and of Asia.
Cilicia, I'm sorry.
Cilicia. And of Asia, disputing with Stephen. And they were not able to resist the wisdom and the spirit by which he spoke.
Right. So he had the people, they were adversaries against him, but they weren't able to resist the wisdom and the spirit by which he spake, because he didn't speak out of his own mind, out of his own philosophy. He spake because he opened up the scriptures to them and spake according to what the prophets spoke concerning them. How could they resist? See, if we just dealing with my philosophy, my theology, your theology, there's going to be a battle all day long. Like when you be talking to people and you be trying to open up the script to show them, like, man, look, I don't want to hear what that's. I just want to see what you got to say about it. I don't have anything to say about it because it don't matter what I have to say about it. Right, it's what thus said the Most High. So that's why they were not able to resist or gainsay for what's there. They was hating on them, but they wasn't able to. So this is what they did, verse 11.
Then they secretly instigated men which said, we have heard him speak blasphemous words against Moshe and against Elohim.
So they're going to lie. They're going to bring false witnesses that said, we have heard him speak blasphemous words against Moshe and against Elohim. Wow. Go ahead. What did they say?
And they stirred up the people and the elders and the scribes and came upon him and caught him and brought him to the council. And set up false witnesses, which said, this man ceased not to speak blasphemous words against his holy place, against this holy place, and the law. For we have heard him say that this Yahshua of Nazareth shall destroy this place and shall change the customs which Moshe delivered us.
Right, so that was the lie. And this is a lie that preachers today celebrate. Oh yeah, Yahshua came and died, and he done did away with the laws. We don't keep the laws no more. Yay, we're not under that law no more. That lie is the lie that these men were saying. Ain't that something? These men said that this man is preaching against his place, and he is going to change the custody. They use the word customs, and customs only mean customary, which was the commandments and the laws of the Most High. The customs which Moshe delivered us. So that was a false doctrine back then that these false men were saying, that Stephen was saying, but the whole entire Christianity mindset is based around that lie right there that they celebrate today. Oh, Yahshua done changed the laws of Moses. We don't have to keep the Sabbath no more. We can eat anything we want to. We can do all these things now. Okay? So that's heavy how, again, if you don't read this from a historical aspect, people somehow they miss the understanding of what's going on here, okay? But and we're gonna see this again somewhere else. Let's go into Matthew 5th chapter. Matthew 5th chapter, we're gonna read the actual words of the Messiah himself. Again, people say, hey, as long as you're in the Messiah, as long as you in Jesus, I ain't got no problem with you. Yeah, there's a difference between Jesus and Yahshua. A big difference between them two. But this is Yahshua words that we're going to be reading about here that he's saying. Matthew 5, and start this off at verse 17. Matthew 5 and verse 17.
Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. And
that's what he's giving a warning out of his own mouth, saying, think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to, and the word they use here is fulfill. Again, that's one of the words that have more than one meaning if you look it up. Fulfill in this instance only means to perform, to do. It don't mean to bring an end to, because that would defeat the purpose of what he just said in the very same sentence. Fulfill means I only come to do the law, to perform the law. If there's a law that says, the law says that you must stop at that stop sign, then when you driving and you come to the stop sign, you do what? You fulfill the law. And you continue to fulfill the law, because the moment you break the law, now you are under the law. And people don't understand that's what under the law means. It don't mean I'm doing the law so I'm under the law. No, it means the exact opposite. When you break the law, Now you're under the, what's that again? You're subjected to the judgment of the law, because the law says that when you stop at that stop sign and you get and you keep going, now you subject to a fine and a penalty for breaking that law. But as long as you was obedient to that law, you were not subject to the fine and penalty of that law. Yahshua's death, what his death was to bring us out of the penalty of death that we were under. Because when you look at how the scriptures are broken down, real quickly, Exodus 20th chapter that we start off in is the 10 Commandments. Then if you go to Exodus 21st chapter, it begins by saying, now these are the judgments that I will set before them. So he gives you the commandments, and then he gives you the judgment for breaking the commandments. Those judgments are the judgments that we have been delivered from by coming up under the blood of Yahshua. Now we have to keep the commandments of the Most High, or else we will be subjected to the same judgments that we were delivered from. Real simple concept. It's so simple, but yet people have, through false traditions and paganism, have made void all of that understanding. But anyway, he says, think not I am come to destroy the law or the prophet. I am not come to destroy it, but to fulfill. And verse 18.
For truly I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law till all be performed.
He says till heaven and earth pass. He gives you a time period, meaning that there's no more heaven, no more earth. That is when all, it says, not one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law until all be fulfilled. All be fulfilled, meaning heaven and earth pass away. And this is, and here's the tricky part here. People say, some people that have the understanding of keeping the law, they say, well, we don't do the sacrifices because when Yahshua came, he did away with the sacrifices. Well, that's kind of a how do I put it? That's a rudimentary way of looking at it. But if I was to go by what Yahshua says here, he says not one jot or tittle shall in no wise pass from the law. So what do we do with the sacrifices? First of all, you got to understand what the sacrifices by the law was about. Because when we read the law, we find out that there were two criteria that had to be met in order to do a sacrifice. The first criteria that had to be met was they could only be done in a place that the Father chose to set his name there, which is Jerusalem. You could not do sacrifices in any place where you were at. I've never been to Jerusalem before, so quite frankly, I've never done sacrifices before. The other criteria is that they could only be done through the Levitical priesthood of Aharon. Those are the two criteria that had to be met. So Yahshua, when he died, he did not, first of all, he did not die to save the lives of bulls and goats. He died to save our lives so that we would not be subject to sin and death. But as a what's the word? As a result of his death, the veil of the temple rent in two, and he became the prophesied Messiah that was to die for the sins of the world, according to what the prophets wrote of him. But as a result of his death, we don't do sacrificing because what? The Levitical priesthood became null and void. And so again, and understand that the Levitical priesthood was null and void.
We were removed from our land as well.
And we were removed from our land. Absolutely. We can't do sacrifices no more. So it's good to have the total understanding of not one jot or tittle shall in no wise pass from the law. So why don't you do sacrifice? Because through Yahshua's death, we cannot fulfill what was written concerning sacrifices. Because you might have somebody down the street over there saying, well, look, I'm not in the New Testament, so therefore I'm doing sacrifice. No, you're not doing sacrifices because you're not meeting the criteria in the law to do the sacrifices. So what he said was true. Not one jot or tittle shall in no wise pass from the law. Furthermore, I can prove I'm of the tribe of Levi.
Right, because we've been mixed.
Right, Israel been sent away in captivity into all nations. all 12 tribes went into captivity. So if I can't prove that I'm a Levite, I can't prove that man over there is a Levite, you cannot do sacrifices according to the law stipulation of how to go about doing sacrifices, okay? So when we read this, not one jot or tittle shall in no wise.
It's not just Levitical priesthood, it's also Aharon's sons, that particular.
Yeah, well, we call it Levitical priesthood, but the Levites were not the priests. You're right, it was Aharon. He was the actual priest, and to him was given the whole tribe of Levi to do the office or service of the temple. Right, okay? But they called it the priest tribe because of the fact that they were not given an inheritance, and they all lived off of the tithe of the, right.
I was just saying.
Okay, right, okay. So, but anyway, going back to 18, he said, for verily I say unto you, to heaven and earth pass, one jot tittle shall in no wise pass on the law till all be fulfilled. Okay, verse 19.
Whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven.
Right. He said, whosoever shall break one of these least commandments. And the reason why he's saying least is a real simple concept. Because what I consider the least, you might consider the greatest. What you consider the least, I might consider the greatest. So therefore, when he says the least, he means any other commandments, no matter how great you think it is, no matter how small. He said, whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. And the least in the kingdom of heaven is a place that you don't want to be. Matter of fact, we just read the least in the kingdom of heaven because that rich man was the least in the kingdom of heaven. Again, the lake of fire is coming down with the kingdom of heaven. Oh, that's going to be right here on this earth. When we talk about from one new moon from another, one Sabbath from another, shall all flesh come to worship before me? Where do you think they're going? Up to heaven? See, that when you understand the scriptures, it all comes together. It makes sense. But you got to tear down the traditional teachings that has been taught to us by traditions, okay? But it says, whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. Go ahead.
But whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven.
Okay, and verse 20, this is to me one of the most profound verses in the entire New Testament. Seriously. You have to pause on this verse here. Go ahead.
For I say unto you, that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven.
That's a heavy verse there. You just have to sit back and be like, you got to scratch your head. He's like, look, because look, the reason why we are here on this Sabbath is because we are keeping the commandments of the Most High, and our desire is for when he come and just destroy this whole system that we're living in right now, that we may be found worthy to make it into the kingdom of heaven. But the very Messiah that a lot of people say they believe in, he gave this one very hard verse here. Someplace he said, this is a hard saying, who can hear it? He should have said it right after he said this one. This is a hard saying, who can hear it? For I say unto you that except your righteousness shall exceed or surpass or become greater than the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, and understanding, scribes and Pharisees, they knew the law. So if they knew the law, and we ain't even trying to know the law, we ain't got no chance right then and there. None whatsoever. But so that means that we have to study to show ourselves approved. Matter of fact, there's another verse that we're going to read later that's going to go right with this, but I ain't going to read it now. It says, he said, you shall in no case, meaning that you ain't got nothing coming. You shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven. Hallelujah. Let's go into Matthew, the 23rd chapter, Matthew 23. Matthew 23, and I have made a point of saying how the scribes and Pharisees, they knew the law. Look what Yahshua says concerning them. Matthew, the 23rd chapter, start this off at verse 1.
Then spoke Yahshua to the multitude and to his disciples, saying, The scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moshe's seat. All therefore whatsoever they bid you observe, that observe and do. But do not you after their works, for they say and do not.
So see what he's saying? He said the scribes and Pharisees who know the law, he says they sit in Moshe's seat. All therefore whatsoever they bid you to observe, observe and do. Just don't do after their works, because they are wicked in their actions. They are not doing what they're teaching. He gives you examples of the things that they do which are contrary to the spirit of Yah. Okay? And we don't want to be contrary like them. We want to glean in every point the spirit of Yah to the best of our abilities, live our life as a reflection of him and as a reflection of his son. Okay, let's go on back into Matthew the 20th chapter. Matthew the 20th chapter. Okay, start this off at the 25th verse. Matthew 28 and 25.
Matthew 28?
Matthew 20th. Matthew 20th and the 25th verse.
But Yahshua called them unto him and said, You know that the princes of the Gentiles exercise dominion over them, and they that are great exercise authority upon them. But it shall not be so among you. But whosoever will be great among you, let him be your minister.
Right, he said, look, the Gentiles have a way of operating where they have the princes that everybody in the country see as princes or governors or, of the hierarchy, and then they have people over them. He says here, but it shall not be so named among you, but whosoever will be great among you, let him be your minister, or let him be your servant. Okay, go ahead.
And whosoever will be chief among you, let him be your servant. Even as the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister, and to give his life a ransom for many.
Right, because if I would have continued to read, which I had cut it off back in Matthew, where we was at in Matthew 23rd, he would have gave examples of what those scribes and Pharisees do. They like the chief seats in the places, or they like to go into the marketplace to be acknowledged as a man and to be called rabbi. I didn't read that. I should have read that. Called rabbi and master and father and reverend, all these flattering titles that we are not to call no man. We are not to call no man by these flattering titles. As a matter of fact, that's the reason why I came here. But matter of fact, let me go back and read. I just want to pick that up back in Matthew the 23rd chapter. I should have read it, but I cut it short. At the end of 3, he says, but do not ye after their works, for they say and do not. And let's read a few of those. I should have read it, but go ahead, verse 4.
For they bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne, and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers. Right,
that's what these guys do. These scribes, Pharisees, reverends, fathers, pastors, whatever. This is what they do. Well, pastor ain't really a bad word, but those other ones, reverend, because you ain't to revere nobody but the Most High. Father, he said, call no man father on this earth, Right, and reverend too, absolutely, okay? He said, but this is some of the things they do. They bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne, lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers. Verse 5.
But all their works they do for to be seen of men. They make broad their phylacteries and enlarge the tassels of their garments.
Right, because that was, what we wear, the fringes, and sometimes they had the real nice ones that when you look at it, you don't even know what the man says out of his mouth. You just looking at me like, oh man, that's a heavy cat there. That dude is D. You bow down, you show respect because of how he looked. And we do that today among Israel. We do that. That's a whole other thing. But verse 6.
And love the uppermost rooms at feasts, and the chief seats in the synagogues, and greetings in the markets, and to be called of men, Rabbi, Rabbi. But Be not ye called rabbi, for one is your rabbi, even the Messiah, and all ye are brethren.
Right, you know, just on Facebook this week, a brother asked a question concerning moray, because that's what I am, a moray. Moray being a teacher, that's the Hebrew word for teacher. And I told him just this week that to read, because he's like, well, where did all the morays come from? I'm like, well, the thing is, because rabbi, a lot of people will use the term rabbi, and we're not supposed to use the word rabbi, because rabbi is master. That's what it's interpreted as, master. And you don't call no man master. That's what he's saying right here. He says, but that's what they like to be called, rabbi, rabbi. He said, be ye not called rabbi, for one is your master. He didn't say one is your teacher. He said one is your master, even Messiah, and all ye are brethren. See, we're not like the Gentile. We don't exercise lordship one of the other. That's what they do. All ye all are brethren, okay? He says, and verse 9.
And call no man your father upon the earth, for one is your Father, which is in heaven.
And he's talking about from a spiritual sense, my spiritual father. You know, and then, you know, like in Catholicism, that's what they call him, father this, father that. Tell them right here, don't call, you know, call that man father. Matter of fact, now I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm thinking about it. But he said, call no man father, which for one is your Father, which is in heaven, okay? Verse 10.
Neither be you called rulers, for one is your ruler, even the Messiah.
Right, or in the KJV is masters. Be ye not called master, for one is your master, even Messiah, okay? And verse 11 says this.
But he that is greatest among you, you shall be your servant. He that is greatest among you shall be your servant. And whosoever shall exalt himself shall be abased, and he that shall humble himself shall be exalted.
There you go. There you go. Whosoever shall exalt himself, you exalt yourself, you're going to be broken down. Believe that. Okay, and he that shall humble himself shall be exalted. Hallelujah. Verse 13.
But woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. For ye neither go in yourselves, neither suffer you them that are entering to go in.
Right, neither allow them that would enter to go in. And that's the problem when we're following man and not following the word of the Most High. Because that's what they do, okay? So, last week we had a study on the spirit of meekness. So this kind of go hand in hand with the spirit of meekness, because ain't no meek person, a meek person is not going to allow nobody to call them by them flattering titles. Reverend, Father, Master, Rabbi. A meek leader is not going to do that. Okay, and this is what he said here. So now I'm going to have you, just so my editing would be cool, we're going to go back to that Matthew the 20th chapter and read that again. Matthew 20th chapter again, Matthew 20th chapter and verse 25. Matthew 20th and verse 25.
But Yahshua called them unto him and said, you know that the princes of the Gentiles exercise dominion over them, and they that are great exercise authority upon them. But it shall not be so among you. But whosoever will be great among you, let him be your minister. And whosoever will be chief among you, let him be your servant. Even as the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister, and to give his life as a ransom for many.
Right, he said the Son of Man, talking about himself, Yahshua, he did not come down to be ministered unto, but he came down to minister. So minister, in its essence, is the one who serves, is a servant that ministers something, okay? Let's go into Job. I said I wasn't going to go too much in the Old Testament just to prove the point, but I got to go back in Job because there's something real good in the book of Job that I like to draw from, just to deal with that whole topic of how what these ministers do today. Okay, that's right before Psalms. Job 32. Job 32. And in the book of Job, for those who may not be familiar with Job, Job was a very righteous servant of the Most High. So much that when all of the sons of Elohim came before the Father, the story says that Satan came amongst them. And the father looked at Satan, and first he asked him, like, well, where you been? Where you come from? And he said he went up and down, to and fro, which I guess that's why the Catholics go like this, because they up and, you know, up and down, to and fro, right, okay? And then after he told them, you know, where he came from, the father said to him, have you considered my servant Job? Job is a perfect cat. He told him that. It's like Job down there minding his business, and the father having a conversation with Satan, and he said, have you considered my servant Job down there? As you done been up and down, to and fro, have you checked him out? And then the saint said, well, look, you know, you done hooked him up. You know, you done protect him, made a hedge around him, whatever. If you pull that hedge down, he's going to curse you to your face. And so the father took on that challenge and allowed Satan to put his hand against Job. And he took so much stuff away from Job. We're not going to read the whole thing. I'm going down to where we at in Job 32. But again, to make a long story short, after Job was in the worst possible place he could be, he done lost all 10 of his children. His own wife came to him and said, why do you hold fast your integrity? Curse YAH and die. Okay, just get it over with. I got things to do, places to be, people to see, okay? And you wasting time here, okay? It's done. It's finished. Our children gone. You done lost all the crib and everything, and you sit down here rubbing ashes out of your head. You know, looking like you got AIDS, what we call AIDS or leprosy or whatever. Right, yeah. Okay? Curse YAH and die. Be done with it, because he done put his hand against you. And then he said, look, you sound like one of the foolish women, okay? Do we not expect to get good and get evil? And that's another bad doctrine that people teach too. You will get evil in this society. Just like that poor man we read about earlier. He was a righteous cat, because it said that he was in the bosom of Abraham, but he was poor when he was on this earth, because for whatever reason, that's where he was at. For whatever, however the father did it, that father operate like that for whatever reason. It's not for us to judge that. But here Job was in that same situation, and he was knocking at the door of death. But the father told Satan, don't put your hand on him and take his life from him. That's the only thing you can't do. Okay, so then he ends up having 3 of his friends to come and comfort him. So the vast majority of the scriptures is about him interacting with these 3 friends. All his 3 friends coming to him saying, now Job, look here, bro. Man, you sitting up here, you know, and I don't want to say nothing, man, but you need to repent from that sins that you done transgressed the Most High. And maybe in his mercy, he will get you out from under that. And Job sitting there listening to all his 3 friends supposed to be comforted. He's going back and forth with them. Look, I ain't did nothing. I'm minding my own business. I don't know what. And that's how people do you. When you in the worst situation, they'll judge you because of not knowing what the situation is. Right. But they know some ain't know. It's kind of like the whole dichotomy of these $1 million rappers that we see today, that's spewing all type of wickedness out their mouth, but then you see them up on the walls. First, I like to give all praises to God. And that's the way they mindset is. And then when you try to teach them the truth, it's like, how you going to teach me the truth? I must be doing something right if I got all this here. See, that's the dichotomy that we're dealing with. Our mindset is don't have a proper understanding of how the Father operates. Okay? But the Father said, much is given, much is required. So I would hate to be any of them having been given so much and using all that stuff for what they're using for. They ain't going to have no excuse at the time appointed. You know? But here again, the whole vast majority of Job is them going back and forth, okay? And so then, while they going back and forth through this whole thing, you got this young cat sitting there named Elihu, sitting there listening to them going back and forth. And I wasn't going to read this whole chapter because I just want to read to the end of it, but I start this off at verse 1 because this young cat is so inspiring to me. Job, the 32nd chapter, the first verse. Go ahead.
So these 3 men ceased to answer Job because he was righteous in his own eyes. Then was kindled the wrath of Elihu, the son of Barachel, the Buzite of the kindred of Ram, against Joab, or Job. His wrath kindled because he justified himself rather than Elohim.
And see, sometimes people can make you get upset like that. But this is a lesson saying you ain't supposed to. People accuse you of different things, and you sometimes you just let them, because that's the spirit that they're dealing with. Anybody coming to you talking crazy stuff that you know they don't know what they're talking about. That's a spirit that these people are dealing with. We don't know that that's a spirit. We thinking we could reason with them. Like, wait a minute, come on, man. Why I wouldn't do nothing like that? Why would you think I do? No, because he has been led to believe that you would do something like that. And furthermore, he wants to put you down to make you feel, whatever. But you got to maintain your integrity. And so Job ended up going back and forth with him. He wasn't supposed to do that, though. He was supposed to be like, okay, whatever. But he got so fed up, he's like, look, like pretty much, look, I know that I've been doing this and doing that, but you don't justify yourself. The Father sees all things. And so this young brother says, so these three men ceased to answer Job because he was righteous in his own eyes. Back and forth, he kept, and one of them come this way, Job come back with him. Another one come this way, Job come back with him. Job could not just shut up. He had to continue to try to deal with this thing, not knowing that it could have been Satan right there dealing with them three men, making them say what they say, because that's what the adversary do. Work with it, and we've all been there before. Man, I done dealt that person so good without gainsaying. Now they coming at me like this. Why? And you be mystified by that. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but spiritual wickedness. And if you're not subject to the spirit of YAH, you are subject to any spirit out here. I say that all day long. That cat up there in Pennsylvania had started a little program up there for inner city kids. People are thinking that cat was probably the best cat in the world. But he wasn't subject to the spirit of YAH. And all that he was doing, and now it's coming to light now. Just as an example of that. But before then, man, that's a real good dude in the eyes of people, But if he had been subject to the spirit of YAH, he would have never allowed himself to even deal with that spirit possession like that. Because you got to be possessed to do things like that, seriously. You go to any of these county jails or whatever, you can walk around, you'll see a lot of people in there that succumb to that spirit for just that 5 minutes, that 10 minutes, whatever. I don't care if it's domestic abuse, you with somebody that you love, and all of a sudden, dude raise up his hand and just want to, that's spirit, that's an evil spirit that cat is dealing with. Same thing with the woman, with the husband, all that. These are evil spirits that people are allowed themselves to be subjected to. That's why we have to know how to combat it with the spirit of the Most High. So again, here was Job. He's going back and forth with these cats because he feel like he had to justify himself because he know he done put some hard work in trying to be a true servant of the Most High, eschewing evil, as the scripture says, okay? Verse 3.
Also against his three friends was his wrath kindled, because they had found no answer, and yet had condemned Job. Now Elihu had waited till Job had spoken, because they were elder than he. And when Elihu saw that there was no answer in the mouth of these three men, then his wrath was kindled. And Elihu the son of Barachel the Buzite answered and said, I am young, and ye are very old. Therefore I was afraid, and dared not show you my opinion.
Now this young dude, he's a young cat among these 4 elder men, and he was very wise. And you can tell he's wise just by the words that come out of his mouth. Before he's able to present his point, he's gonna first qualify. And keep in mind, he's angry. And see, that's an art form, to be able to be angry, but yet have your right mind to be able to come out the way that you're supposed to come out in order to be effective. Because to come out angry is not always, and most time, not the best way to come at people. You always, when somebody make you angry, the first thing you want people to know, I'm angry. But wait a minute, his mindset was to show them their error. despite him being angry. You see that? And that's where wisdom come in. He was angry because the scripture said he was angry, but he did not come out speaking in anger. Because he knew that, first of all, if he came out speaking in anger, they would have been looking at a young dude being angry. And whatever came out of his mouth, it wouldn't have made no difference. So he qualified, he was wisdom in the words that he used, okay? First of all, he used proper timing. Because he didn't, interrupt none of them guys while they were speaking. And they spoke for a long time. And he just, sat there all the time. He was listening to them saying word after word. His anger was being just building up. Okay? And it said, verse 4, now Elihu had waited till Job had spoken because they were elder than he. Verse 5 again.
When Elihu saw that there was no answer in the mouth of these three men, then his wrath was kindled. And Elihu the son of Barachel the Buzite answered and said, I am young, and you are very old. Wherefore I was afraid, and dare not show you my opinion. I said, days should speak, and multitude of years should teach wisdom. But there is a spirit in man, and the inspiration of the Almighty gives them understanding. Great men are not always wise, neither do the age understand judgment. That's
heavy. Great men supposed to be wise. Great men being great men in stature, great men by reason of age, whatever. He said great men are not always wise, neither do the age understand judgment. That's something he had to come to learn. Go ahead.
Therefore I said, hearken to me. I also will show mine opinion. Behold, I waited for your words. I gave ear to your reasons, while you searched out what to say. Yes, I attended unto you, and behold, there was none of you that convinced Job or that answered his words.
So he said, before I even come out and say what I want to say, I want you all to understand that I respected your age. I respected you guys being elders. And furthermore, I listened very attentively to everything each one of you said. So intently that I might be able to even quote some of the stuff that you guys said, that you might have forgotten what you said or not. That's how intent I was in listening to you all. But go ahead.
Lest you should say, we have found out wisdom. Elohim thrusted him down, not man. Now he hath not directed his words against me, neither will I answer him with your speeches. They were amazed. They answered no, they left off speaking.
Right, because the wisdom that he came across to them caused them, they could not come at him with nothing crazy. Because he brought forth the spirit of wisdom to them. Not the spirit of self as some young dude that don't even know what's going on. He came at somebody that, look, I was watching this whole thing. And I let you all say what you all to say, and I made sure that you all didn't have nothing else to say before I'm giving you what I'm giving you. And when he came to them like that, he said they were amazed, and they answered no more. They had nothing else to say because now they want to hear what this young cat is gonna say. Go ahead.
When I had waited, for they spoke not, but stood still and answered no more. I said, I will answer also my part. I also will show my opinion, for I am full of matter. The spirit within me constrains me. Behold, my belly is as wine which has no vent. It is ready to burst like new bottles.
That's the deep thing. Wine, they don't have no vent. That means that's like a bomb.
It's like a acid reflux.
Right. He says ready to burst like new bottles. Okay, verse 20.
I will speak that I may be refreshed. I will open my lips and answer. Let me not, I pray you, accept any man's person, neither let me give flattering titles unto men. For I know not to give flattering titles. In so doing, my Maker will soon take me away.
That's heavy. So let's go back to the reverend, master, rabbi, all those flattering titles. He said, look, let me not, I pray you, accept any man's person. Meaning that I'm not going to see you guys as some great person when I speak according to the words of the Most High. And let me give flattering titles unto no man, neither let me give flattering titles unto man. For I know not to give flattering titles, in so doing, my Maker will soon take me away. And these churches allow these men to have these flattering titles, not knowing that that's something that the Father say don't do. That's heavy. But I read the whole chapter because I had to read it because it was just so cold-blooded. But the whole point of me going there was in addressing what we read in Matthew concerning the whole thing concerning us calling men by these heavily revered titles that we are not to do. Okay, but now getting back to the lesson at hand, let's go on to Acts the 28th chapter. Acts the 28th chapter. That was just a little something on the way to learning something there. Acts the 28th chapter. And Acts the 28th chapter. And let's we're going to read concerning the Apostle Paul. Acts the 28th chapter. And start this off at the 17th verse. Acts 28th chapter and the 17th verse. Acts 28 and 17.
And it came to pass that after 3 days Shaul called the chief of the Hebrews together. And when they were come together, he said unto them, Men and brethren, though I have committed nothing against the people or customs of our fathers, yet was I delivered prisoner from Jerusalem into the hands of the Romans, who, when they had examined me, would have let me go, because there was no cause of death in me. But when the Hebrews, or Yahudi, spoke against it, I was constrained to appeal unto Caesar, not that I had ought to accuse my nation, not that I had ought to accuse my nation of. For this cause, therefore, have I called for you to see you and to speak with you, because that for the hope of Israel I am bound with this chain. And they said unto him, We neither received letters of Yahudi concerning you, neither any of the brethren that came showed or spoke any harm of you. But we desire to hear of you what you think, for as concerning this sect, we know that everywhere it is spoken against.
Right, so all the Yahudim that spoke concerning Yahshua, they were being spoken against by the people. Why? Because the people were making false witnesses against what they were actually teaching concerning them. All that they were speaking was saying, look, this was the Messiah according to the prophecies in the scriptures. But they had a problem believing that. So they created all type of other things saying, look, they don't keep the laws no more, this, that, and the other, which we read what they did with Stephen. That's why they were being spoken against. Okay? Go ahead, verse 23.
And when they had appointed him a day, there came many to him into his lodging, to whom he expounded and testified the kingdom of Elohim, persuading them concerning Yahshua, both out of the law of Mosaic and out of the prophets, from morning till evening. So
this is the manner in which Paul spoke and regarding when he talked concerning Yahshua. He said, both out of the law of Moshe and out of the prophets from morning to evening. This is his manner in which he taught. He didn't teach by his own opinion. He didn't teach by his own other side doctrine. He taught them according to what all of them had access to, which was Moses and the prophets. That's how he dealt. And that's the problem today, because modern day Christianity, again, don't understand the Messiah according to the prophets. They only understand the Messiah according to what was taught to them through Christianity, church. You know, they were taught that first of all, they were taught that his name was Jesus, which that's impossible. That was impossible for his name to have been Jesus by any stretch of the imagination, okay? But Jesus is his own entity, which they show him as that white guy, which again, the actual Messiah don't look like that, but Jesus would look like that, because he's based off of the same gods that the Romans was worshiping before there was Christianity.
I guess the name Jesus would be kind of an institution. That's true. Right, yeah, I never thought about it like that.
Like what?
Like everything that they have surrounding it is
absolutely.
So much
you know a tree by its fruits. You know a tree by its fruits. And you're going to say, look, this is Jesus. This is what he looked like. And he came so that you don't have to keep the Sabbath no more, because he had his own day called Sunday, and that we worship him and his resurrection on Easter Sunday morning, and we worship him with the eggs and bunny rabbits, and everything built around modern day Christianity is based around this entity they call Jesus, which is a pale imitation of the actual Hebrew Messiah, Yahshua, which taught that, hey, you got to keep the laws of my Father. Not my will, but his will be done. That the whole message of Yahshua is different from the one that they call Jesus. Real simple. And here this disciple of Yahshua taught them not out of his own philosophy, not out of pagan tradition, but from Moses and the prophets. The law of Moses and the prophets, from morning to evening, okay? Let's go in Acts the 17th chapter, moving right along. Acts the 17th chapter. Acts the 17th chapter.
I just realized he was speaking to the chief Yahudi.
Oh yeah, definitely.
He said some believe and some didn't.
Right.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Acts, backing up in Acts the 17th chapter, and pick this up at start this off at verse 1. Acts 17th chapter and verse 1.
Now when they had passed through Amphipolis and Apollonia, they came to Thessalonica, where was a synagogue of the Yahudi. And Shaul, as his manner was, went in unto them, and 3 Sabbath days reasoned with them out of the scriptures.
So again, because we understand this being a history book, it said that this is what Paul did. It says he reasoned with them 3 Sabbath days, Sabbath still being a 7th day, not the first day of the week, and this is after Yahshua died and was resurrected. So the Sabbath had not changed. Okay, and it said he reasoned with them. He went in a synagogue and reasoned with them 3 Sabbath days. Out of the scriptures. That's what they did. They reasoned out of the scriptures on the Sabbath day. Okay, now skip down in the same chapter. Skip down to verse. Skip down to verse 10.
And the brethren immediately sent away Shaul and Silas by night unto Berah, who coming there went into the synagogue of the Yahudi. These were more noble than those in the Thessalonica, in that they received the word with all readiness of mind, and searched the scriptures daily, whether those things were so.
Right, so they went into the synagogue of the Yahudim again, opened up the scriptures. Again, not coming preaching their own philosophy, but they opened up the scripture, and it said that they searched the scriptures daily. And it says, and these of Berea were more notable than those that were in Thessalonica. Why? Because they received the word, not some man's philosophy, but the word with all readiness of mind, and searched the scriptures daily whether those things were so. Okay, so they had to believe not just because they had lifted up some man. They believe, and this man's supposed to be, hey man, this man is heavy, man. He is one of the chief Pharisees. He will learn it all. No, they believe because they opened up the scriptures and believed what was the written word was about. And that's what made them more noble than those other people that, I guess, whatever for what it is, I guess they didn't believe. I guess they may not open up the scriptures. They may have just judged the man according to who he was instead of judge him based off of what was being read out of the scriptures for whatever reason. But Berea was more notable than Thessalonica because of what they did. Search the scriptures daily to see whether those things were so. Okay, let's go into Psalms 111. Psalms 111. Actually, I'm seeing I got this a little bit out of order. I meant to read this earlier, Psalm 111, but we're going to read it now. Psalm 111 and verse 9. This is going back to the flattering title thing. I meant to read this earlier, but for some reason it's typed incorrect. But Psalm 111 and verse 9. Go ahead.
He sent redemption unto his people. He hath commanded his covenant forever. Holy and reverent is his name. Right.
Okay, so there it is. It says how the Father sent redemption to his people. He hath commanded his covenant. How long?
Forever.
Forever. It says holy and reverent is his name. Because his name is holy, or Kodesh, and his name is reverent, or to be revered. man's name or man in itself is not to be revered.
Right.
Okay? We are not revered means to revere somebody. You're not supposed to revere no man. That's a flattering title, okay? Verse 10.
The fear of Yahshua is the beginning of wisdom. A good understanding have all they that do his commandments. His praise endures forever. That's
right. So that fear of Yah is the beginning of wisdom. If you have not developed a good fear in the Most High, the scripture said you are void of wisdom. I was actually looking for something else that I didn't have in my list here, and hopefully I can find it before this is over with. Let's go on to 20. Okay, we're going to go into this 24th chapter, Acts 24 and verse 10. Acts 24 and verse 10.
Then Shaul, after that the governor had beckoned unto him to speak, answered, For as much as I know that you have been of many years a judge unto this nation, I do the more cheerful answer for myself, because that you may have understand that there are yet but 12 days since I went up to Jerusalem for to worship, and they neither found me in the temple disputing with any man, neither raising up the people, neither in the synagogues nor in the cities. Neither can they prove the things whereof they now accuse me. But this I confess unto you, that after the way which they call heresy, so worship I the Elohim of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and in the prophets. And
so again, he said, but this I confess unto thee, that after the way which they call heresy, so worship I the Elohim of my fathers, believe in all things which are written in the law and the prophets. Go ahead.
And have hope toward Elohim, which they themselves also allow, that there shall be a resurrection of the dead, both of the just and unjust.
Right, so he said, hey, I believe all things that's written in the law and in the prophets. I didn't come preaching something different than what's in the law and the prophets. Okay, back up to Acts, the 21st chapter. Acts, the 21st chapter. This is actually the one that I was, in my mind, I had got them kind of mixed up. But Acts, the 21st chapter, because Paul, boy, he was under a whole lot of scrutiny when he was going about teaching them concerning who Yahshua was. Because see, we got to understand one thing, that from a historical aspect, Paul did not have to preach to them what day was a Sabbath day. Neither did Yahshua have to preach to them what day. Well, that was redundant. They knew what day the Sabbath day was. They knew about Passover. They knew about what the difference between eating swine. So the concept that anybody would have eaten swine in this day and age among any of them was unheard of. That wasn't even part of a doctrine that they would have been preaching to teach people. The whole thing for them was preaching concerning who Yahshua was according to the prophecies. But as far as what we do concerning how we serve the Father, that was consistent. That's the reason why Yahshua said, whatsoever the scribes and Pharisees, whatsoever they bid you to do, you do. Because they're going to be telling you to keep the laws. So that was never a question. The question was whether or not Yahshua was the prophesied Messiah. And that was the only thing that they had a point of issue with. And then later on, they allowed circumcision to be a point of contention, because as a people, we circumcised at 8 days old. So we didn't usually be adults circumcising, but then you had some of us going teaching the Gentiles, look, y'all better compel them that they have to go get circumcised. When they have to learn scriptures, learn what the truth is first, and then they have to be compelled in their own mind to go get circumcision or not. You don't force nobody to go get circumcised, because that circumcision ain't going to mean nothing if they hadn't been circumcised of the heart first. So that's what that issue was, what you read about in Acts the 15th chapter. But we're in Acts the 21st chapter now. And Acts 21st chapter, start this off at verse 17.
And when they were come to Jerusalem, the brethren received us gladly. And the day following, Shaul went in with us unto Jacob, and all the elders were present. And when he had saluted them, he declared particularly what things Elohim had wrought among the Gentiles by his ministry. And when they heard it, they praised Elohim and said unto him, You see, brother, how many thousands of Yahudi there are which believe, and they are all zealous of the law, and they are informed of you. that you teach all the Yahudi which are among the Gentiles to forsake Moshe, saying that they ought not to circumcise neither children, neither to walk after the customs.
Now look at that's what happened. Now look, break this down. Verse 20 says, and when they heard it, they glorified Yah and said unto him. Now you see, brother, how many thousands of the Yahudim there are which believe, and they are all zealous of the law. That's the combination that they should have had, for them to believe and be zealous of the law. They were good. But they done heard about you. They are informed of thee, that you teach all the Yahudim which are among the Gentiles to forsake Moshe, saying that they ought not to circumcise your children, neither to walk after the customs. This is what is going out about you, dude. Okay? Verse 22.
What is this, therefore? The multitude must needs come together, for they will hear that you are come. Do therefore this that we say to you. We have 4 men which have a vow on them. Them take and purify thyself with them, and be at charge with them, that they may shave their heads, and all may know that those things thereof they were informed concerning you are nothing, and that you thyself also walk orderly and keep the law.
So they advised him on what he needed to do to show, to appease these people that were believing this falsehood. But churches today, they believe that falsehood today. Paul told us that we don't have to keep the laws of Moses and that we don't have to do the circumcision. But that was falsehood that they were teaching against them. Ain't that deep? That's right here in the scripture. He said, look, go ahead and take these men here, purify yourself with them, and you're going to show that you walk orderly and keep the law. So the whole, by definition, walking orderly is what? Keeping the law. If you ain't keeping the law, you ain't walking orderly. No matter who you say you believe in. Okay? Verse 25.
As touching the Gentiles which believe, we have written and concluded that they observe no such thing, save only that they keep themselves from things offered to idols, and from blood, and from strangle, and from fornication.
And see, a lot of people get that messed up. A lot of people saying, well, I'm a Gentile, so therefore I don't have to get circumcision according to what we're saying there. Not understanding what he's saying. And he said, as touching the Gentiles which believe, we have written concluded they observe no such thing, save only that they do what? Keep themselves from things offered to idols, from blood, from strangle, and from fornication. Let's deal with that for a minute, because he gave them 4 things here. He said to keep themselves from things offered to idols. That's a religious connotation there. When you eat something offered to an idol, that's idolatry, okay? From blood, okay, which we're not supposed to eat according to the law. From strangle, and from animals that are strangled, you're not supposed to, and from fornication. 4 things. So if that was all that the Gentiles had to do, what about thou shalt not bear false witness? Oh, I guess they can do that now. What about thou shalt not steal? Oh, yeah, they can do that now. See, that don't make sense, because people don't have the sense enough to understand that when he was telling them that in order for them to get this word, you need to, first, you can't mix Yah with idols. So you have to put that away. The fornication that y'all are known as the people to do in the context of that false worship, all that has to go before y'all can even step in these doors and hear that. Watch. Let's go into Acts. In fact, we're going to back up to what he's referring to here, Acts the 15th chapter. Again, when people don't have a historical context of what they're reading, they read one verse and then they go all out the door with it. Acts the 15th chapter, and start this at verse 1. Acts 15 and verse 1.
And certain men which came down from Yahudi taught the brethren and said, except you be circumcised after the manner of Moshe, you cannot be saved.
Right, that was their whole point of contention. Hey, you must be circumcised, and to a certain degree, they are actually really correct about that. But you have to first be circumcised of the heart before you can be circumcised of the flesh first. If you're not circumcised of the heart first, you can do all the cutting you want. It's not going to matter for nothing. Okay? But go ahead.
When therefore Paul and Barnabas had no small dissension and disputation with them, they determined that Paul and Barnabas and certain other of them should go up to Jerusalem unto the apostles and elders about this question. And being brought on their way by the assembly, they passed through Phoenicia and Samaria, declaring the conversion of the Gentiles, and they caused great joy unto all the brethren. And when they were come to Jerusalem, they were received of the assembly and of the apostles and elders, and they declared all things that Elohim had done with them. But there rose up certain of the sect of the Pharisees which believed, saying that it was needful to circumcise them, and to command them to keep the law of Mosaic. And the apostles and elders came together for to consider this matter. And when there had been such disputing, and when there had been much disputing, Kepha rose up and said unto them, Men and brethren, you know how that a good while ago Elohim had chose among us the Gentiles by my mouth, and should hear the word of the good news and believe. And Elohim, which knows the hearts, bear them witness, giving them the Holy Spirit, even as he did unto us. And put no difference between us and them, purifying their hearts by faith. Now therefore, why tempt you Elohim to put a yoke upon the neck of the disciples, which neither our fathers nor we were able to bear?
Now he says, again, that's the question. Why tempt you Elohim to put a yoke upon the neck of the disciples, which neither our fathers nor we were able to bear? People are like, well, what's that? Well, they were all circumcised, but just like I mentioned earlier, they were circumcised as babies. They wasn't circumcised as grown men. And believe me, being circumcised, and I'm speaking from experience, because I was circumcised at 25 years old. It's not a pleasant thing. When you force somebody to go get circumcised, that was not the context of what was supposed to have been done to these men. Neither you or your fathers were able to bear that, because y'all don't know what that feels like to be circumcised as a grown man. That's what he was talking about here. How you going to put a yoke on them that neither you or your fathers was able to bear? But go ahead.
But we believe that through the grace of the Master Yahshua the Messiah, we shall be saved, even as they. Mm-hmm. Then all the multitude kept silent and gave audience to Barnabas and Paul, declaring what miracles and wonders Elohim had wrought among the Gentiles by them. And after they had held their peace, Jacob answered, saying, Men and brethren, hearken unto me. Simeon had declared how Elohim at the first did visit the Gentiles to take out of them a people for his name, or Kepha. And to this agree the words of the prophets, as it is written, After this I will return and will build again the tabernacle of David, which is fallen down, and I will build again the ruins thereof, and I will set it up, that the residue of men might seek after the sovereign, and all the Gentiles upon whom my name is called, saith Yahshua, who do all these things. Known unto Elohim are all his works, from the beginning of the world. Wherefore my sentence is that we trouble not them, which from among the Gentiles are turned to Elohim, but that we write unto them that they abstain from pollutions of idols, and from fornication, from things strangled, and from blood. See, we read this earlier in the 21st chapter, but this is where it started right here. He said, my sentence is that we trouble not them which from among the Gentiles are turned to Elohim, but that we write unto them. This is what we're going to put forth from them right now. That you abstain from pollution of idols, all y'all idols that y'all was worshiping, from the fornication, because even in their worship of the idols, they had what they called, what we call the nuns today, that they were sexual, they had sexual rituals inside of that idolatry that they did back in that paganism, okay? He said, and from things strangled and from blood. But look what he said, verse 21. For Moshe of old time hath in every city them that preach him, being read in the synagogues every Shabbat.
Right, he said, look, you tell them that this is what they had to do right now. Because they continue, said Moshe of old time have in every city them that preach him, being read in the synagogue every Sabbath day. So all the things that are in the law, including service and everything else, that's all going to come into play and goes on.
So I have a question.
Uh-huh.
People that read this, they think that when they read what they wrote, that they're telling them that they don't have to keep the law, that all they have to do is...
Correct.
But what they're really talking about is you don't have to be circumcised in your flesh right now. Just stay away from these, and then after that...
Right, because these were the immediate issues that had to be addressed. Because like there were some issues where it says where they had brought Gentiles into the thing and they were not circumcised. Well, that was one of the issues that they dealt with. No, he had to first be circumcised spiritually up here. Once you circumcise spiritually, everything else is going to fall into play. So that's what he said. But keep going, verse 22.
Then pleased it the apostles and elders with the whole assembly to send chosen men of their own company to Antioch with Paul and Barnabas, namely Yahshua, surnamed Barnabas, and Silas, chief men among the brethren. And they wrote letters by them after this manner: the apostles and elders and brethren send greeting unto the brethren which are of the Gentiles in Antioch and Syria and Sicilia. Right.
So what they basically had to calm this thing that was going on, because some of the Gentiles, imagine if you're a Gentile and you just not coming into this understanding, because see, these were not, people don't understand, like today we call these religions. This is my religion, your religion, denomination. But back then they didn't see religion, they saw customs, they saw people. You're either going to walk in the way of the Greeks and serve their gods, you're going to walk in the way of the Assyrians and serve their gods, or you're going to walk in the way of the Hebrews and serve their Elohim. See, that is how they saw it. They didn't see it like, oh, I'm choosing this religion and religion. So when these Gentiles were coming to this truth, they're hearing this truth, they bearing witness of the miracles that the apostles was doing, but now all of a sudden, other men of Hebrews were coming to them and saying, y'all need to go get circumcised. But the apostles were trying to show them how they got to first be righteous. They got to first choose to be circumcised spiritually first. So now, therefore, in their own time, they will grasp hold of all of the aspects of the covenant and join themselves to the commonwealth of Israel that way. Okay, but before they can even join themselves to the commonwealth, they have to first put down all of these pagan things that they did, customs that were based off of their paganisms. Because they couldn't come in here and then go back talking about, oh, well, we doing the Saturnalia celebration on December 25th. No, you can't come in here with that. You can't come in here with these fools that, offered up idols, whatever. No, you can't have that. You got to be able to first put that down quick. That circumcision of your flesh, oh, you do that at your time appointed, because we can't put that on you as of right now, because you got to first do it here. If you ain't got it here, you ain't going to be able to do that. If you can't put away that blood, if you can't put away all those things that we tell you these things to do based off of y'all pagan worship, then what you going to be circumcised?